100 over billion of investments into the region, of which 50% of it has been realized, and it's now giving new jobs and socioeconomic development to the region itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raghu. Well, you can see here in practice, really on the ground, really experience from Malaysia on a particular corridor. Even if it's a national corridor, there's a lot of good lessons, I think, that can be learned by other countries on national corridors, developing national corridors, but also, of course, trying to do sub-regional corridors, which is even more difficult, of course, moving into section 4, in the model that Pradeep has presented to us this morning. We're going to have a short panel. We're going to try to go a little bit deeper with all the speakers and our two other participants also from Vietnam and Lao PDR, going a little bit deeper into some of the questions and issues that have been mentioned already in all the presentations. No? I would like to start with the issue of the planning. Many participants have mentioned about the importance of really having with a vision, a strategy, a plan, a master plan. Mr. Raghu has just mentioned. So this is very important, and it's one of the first steps after you have analyzed what are the key challenges actually that your corridor is facing. So let me ask, what is some of the good experiences or good practice maybe, or ideas on how to do that, how to come up with a good corridor plan? Let me ask Mr. Diriji Van Ven on this from Lao PDR, please. Yes, please.
Good afternoon. Distinguished guests, delegates. Thank you, Mr. Alfredo. Thank you, Mr. Antonio, for your very comprehensive presentation, and some of our colleagues just have presented just now. Actually, I would like to share the experience of the Laos, how that we develop our economic corridors. For the Lao PDR, the economic corridor development initiative has been illustrated from the vision of transforming a landlocked to a landlinked with the sub-regional and regional economic connectivity, which can enabling Lao PDR to become a hub for the transformation, as mentioned, that we are in the center of the GMS countries. And therefore, the physical connectivity is necessary and important to be improved and upgrade in order to facilitate the transportation among the GMS countries, as well as the ASEAN countries, to China and to other regions, which encompasses. The improvement of the infrastructure and construction of the roads, railway, port, and dry ports is very crucial. Currently, the economic corridor developments has been demonstrating and implementing under one of the 6 main outcomes of Lao National Socio-Economic Development Plan, which has stated that the engagement of the regional and international cooperation and integration to enhance with the robust infrastructure and effective of utilization of natural potential and geographical advantage. This is mentioned in our national development plan. Meanwhile, the economic corridor developments has been used as a key driven infrastructure developments for the regional cooperation and integration through the physical infrastructure connectivities. The economic corridor in Lao PDR is strongly supported by a strategic geography as a landlocked into in the center of GMS countries that provide opportunity for the countries participate in and access to the regional and sub-regional economic cooperation and integration with the enhancing the participation in the national market and global value chain. The statistical geography has increased the role of Lao PDR in engaging developments of the North-South economic corridors, East-West economic corridor, and Southern economic corridors. These corridors are prioritized economic corridors development of the GMS countries to connect majority cities and urban centers, borders, node, and maritime gateway. The industrial hub, tourist site, and major trade routes in support of the sub-regional economics integration. They promote trade, investment, and other economic activity along, in principle, the routes and their surrounding areas. To realize the full function of the economic corridors, Lao PDR and GMS countries have cooperated and work on the facilitated policies in parallel with the physical infrastructure strengthening among the member countries with a strong support, both technical and financial assistance of ADB. In this relation, I would like to express my sincere thanks to ADB and GMS Secretariat for the prolonged cooperation and support Lao PDR to demonstrate the economic corridor development to realize the economic benefit through diversified sector development. Those play important role for development and economic growth of Lao PDR as well. The enhancing the regional cooperation and integration and the strengthening of the development related to sector with enhancement of the regional trade and environment participation of and attraction. Besides the regular support to the main corridor, ADB has also assisted Lao PDR to review and access the NSEC number 8, which is a sub-corridor under NSEC aiming to connect with the capital cities between Lao PDR, Vietnam, Hanoi, that will facilitate. One is to grow the trade and investment around the NSEC 8, and two, to access to the port in Vietnam and support Lao PDR strategy for transformation from the landlocked to a landlink countries. This first question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Pampeng. Lao PDR clearly has a very clear strategy, including corridor development at the core of its national development strategy. It's a country that, of course, is a landlocked country, and that's why it's incredibly important to really link with the others from landlocked to landlink with economic corridor development there. So very important to include that as part of your national strategy. That's, I think, a key lesson I learned from Lao PDR. I don't know if anybody else would like to comment on this idea of the importance, a good example or a good practice on how do we come up with a good plan, a good strategic master plan for a corridor, either national or even more difficult, a regional one. Anybody? Please, Mr. Ha from Vietnam.
Yeah. First, I would like to join our colleagues here to thank ADB and Georgia as a host country for organizing this very crucial and important meeting that help us to meet together and share experience on economic development in general and on economic corridor development in particular. So I would like to join the session suggested by Alfredo that in order to make the economic corridor development consistent and efficient, I do think that we should have a good coordination at the national level, like the case of Vietnam. We also have a long territory, north-south upward. So in order to make all the infrastructure development match with the geographical conditions and also link with other countries, we have a master plan at 3 levels. The first one is a national level. The second one is a regional level. And in Vietnam, we have 5 regions. And at the bottom one, we have the provincial or city level. And according to the master plan rules of Vietnam, we first have to develop the national level to make sure that the macro balance and great things and objectives set the objective for the development of the country for 10 years. And after the national master plan is approved, we will develop and approve the regional master plan. And after that, each province or each city in each region will develop and adopt their provincial level master plan. And after that, all the projects we invest will have to follow the master plan. So with that way, we can make sure that the development of any infrastructure projects must go along with the objectives in allocating resources and in connecting provinces and nodes, like Antonio mentioned, throughout the country as well as with other countries. So that's an experience I would like to share. And I also read a book, I think that maybe most of you here know about. It's the Prisoner of Geography by Tim Marshall.
Wow.
The author of this book wants to imply that if you are located in some area, your fate will be fixed with the features of the area you are located. But after reading the book, I have a different opinion. With development of infrastructure, and especially the revolution, the fourth revolution, I think that we can change the geographical condition in each country. For example, through developing economic corridor, is the way that we can connect together and we can break the curse of the geography. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ha. Good comment, and definitely, I mean, that's part of the way that we do economic corridors. I think is the idea that you don't have to just be happy with what you have. You really can. There is a lot of opportunities really when you connect. First of all, even within your country, different provinces and cities, you know, and you create a national corridor, but even more when you actually go for a regional corridor and you connect with your neighbors. In fact, Lao PDR and Vietnam, this is the latest economic corridor plan that we have been trying to do. They ask ADB to help them to put together some kind of node on how come up with a corridor to connect also the two capitals, actually, Hanoi and Vientiane. And there's a lot of work involved in that. We only have started actually doing something like that, but planning, it was something very, very important. So that's one key element of developing corridors, a good plan, a good vision based on good analysis, good analytical work on what is needed, what are the opportunities of the corridor. No? Another area, second question I would like, and second element that has been mentioned by several participants and by what Pradeep presented this morning was the need to have good institutional arrangements for the corridors. No? So I would like to ask also the panelists if you have any experience, any idea on what good practice in terms of developing good institutional arrangements. What is the role, for example, of local governments? It's very difficult. Sometimes you have the national government, you have the provinces, you have the cities, you have sometimes regional governments like we do have in Vietnam. How can you bring them all together thinking under one single institutional arrangement? Anybody?
Yes. Once again, thank you very much, Alfredo. In fact, in this question is quite interesting. For the Lao PDR, in achieving the comprehensive planning and developing as well as effective implementation of the corridors, I strongly support the need for the clear institutional and governance mechanism of the arrangement, which enhance and engage active consultation and participation of the local governments at the initial stage of the economic corridor developments. This normally we just do, most of the time we have heard about the top downs, but I think the participation of the local government is very important in Lao PDR. Since the objective of the economic corridor is to provide an enhanced livelihood of the people along the main and sub route of the corridors, their developments and requirements and activities are fundamental and address which will help and ensure proper planning of the corridors. The local government have a strong influence role generating the practical result and accelerate the implementation of the works and activity as well. The key player in terms of the management and the governance in the border checkpoint as they facilitate the movement and transport of goods and the services. They are also play a crucial role on the specific local policies decision making between the province to the province which join the border. Meanwhile, their cooperation in specific area, we also spill over the practices and cooperation in the economic corridor development. Moreover, their role on the awareness rising and encourage full participation of the communities, villagers who are living along the economic corridor routes is in providing their concern and needs in order to create related to the income generation activity which help the GMS member countries to address poverty of their people. Is very important for our PDR. That's the role of the local governments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, emphasizing the importance of local governments and dealing with them. Sometimes we try to develop economic corridors, but really the national government don't have really the capacity to do this on its own. You really need to work very closely with local governments. That's very, very important. Dr. Raghu, you also seems to have done great development and great thinking on the institutional arrangement. I know it's only a national corridor, but that seems to be complicated enough already. Maybe you can explain to us how you did that, how you seem to have a sophisticated institutional arrangement for the corridor. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Okay. Because the regional corridor that in Malaysia, especially the East Coast, it was a federal initiative. That means from the national level government, and it involves 4 different states, and they have their own state administrative and plans. So what we did was, in order to have a collaborative development mode, we had one at the federal level where the Prime Minister chairs and the chief ministers of the 4 states will be involved in the decision making. And then on the second level, we had the state itself, where we liaise directly with the state government, and the chief minister chairs that meeting. So that gives both the regional heads of government and the federal government to play an equal partnership role in this development program. And in a way, why we named ourselves as East Coast Development Council and not authority is because we wanted a consultative kind of approach to this regional development. Because at the end of the day, if the regional parties are not into what the federal government is going to dictate to play in the region, then it'll be a one-sided affair. So to have a more collaborative approach to this, so we had a 2-tier kind of a reporting mechanism, which allowed the regional heads to also be actively involved and to give their inputs in the regional development. So that's how we came up with that whole strategy of the governance where federal and state work together. And we became the intermediary between the federal and the state government, where we put both parties together in order to achieve a very good regional development outcomes. And you can see the outcomes that we are having now.
Excellent. No, great experience there. I mean, it's already difficult, national and local governments working together, and then you are all focusing to developing a national corridor. When this, of course, is for sub-regional corridors, this will be even more challenging. And at least I have to say, I don't think we have yet a very good example in Southeast Asia. I hope other colleagues from other regions, maybe in Central Asia and South Asia, you have an experience or a good institutional arrangement on when you have a corridor at least going across 2 or 3 countries. And I hope that we have the opportunity to hear from you also at a certain point in your sessions. A third element that has been mentioned by several people is the need to bring the private sector into this. Public sector alone cannot develop a corridor, at least not an economic corridor. So maybe somebody has a good experience on actually how do we do that? How do we bring the private sector? How do we bring their knowledge, their money, of course? How do you talk to them? How you keep them involved and interested in developing this corridor? I don't know, Janet, maybe you could tell us something, how you do that or try to do that in Mindanao.
3 things. One, we need to have a constant dialogue with the private sector. They are organized by industry clusters, industry associations, or associations by geographic location. So we had to map them out, who they are, and then we had to have constant dialogue with them. And then we formalized what we call the Mindanao Private Sector Dialogue Platform. So it's a regular thing. And second, we also had a seat already that they brought in the government, in our case, the MINDA, as the National Secretariat for the BIMP EAGA. We already have a regular seat in the industry association councils. And so it was easy for us to get the needs of the private sector, and easy for us to dialogue with them. And then we already have a MOA. We also established a MOA with we have what we call the national level private sector association. So like the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So that's national. We have the local chambers of commerce in Mindanao. Industry associations is different. And we have at the national level. And we have the regional level, which is the BIMP EAGA Business Council. So at all levels, we make sure that we are strategically engaged, involved, and we do quarterly dialogues with them. And we have regular conversations. We do it more informally because we feel that we are more productive in the discussions in an informal platform.
Excellent. Very, very good. So let's not forget about private sector. Very interesting experience, I think, and I'm sure many countries also here, you have that experience, and don't forget them. If you are alone, public sector, it will be very difficult to really move forward with developing the economic corridor, either national or sub-regional. Another area, of course, is important is to mobilize money. Without money, we don't have a corridor, no? And that's a very difficult challenge, no? Somehow, we all want to believe that part of the use also coming with a clear vision of a corridor, with talking with the private sector and having a good plan, that will help us to mobilize resources. Mobilize resources maybe from our own national government, from the regional governments, and of course from private sector, and maybe even from development partners. Maybe they also put some money there, no? It's part of why you do the corridor. You want to mobilize and attract investment. No, I don't know if any has any experience on this. Maybe Kumbudi, I mean, you know, in the Eastern Seaboard, you know, and others on this area. How you mobilize resources?
Yes, I think as I mentioned in the presentation that mobilize resources is very difficult. I'm not just difficult, very important for kind of to develop economic corridor because from my example that the mobilize resources and the money to the infrastructure development is a very key of to drive the economic corridor forward. In the case of Thailand, back then, for 30 years ago, for the case of internship, we put heavily money to invest on the port, seaport, the highways and railways, and all the and even airports to make to kind of to make the area is very facilitate investor into the area, and also it's continued as the pivoting case of the recent program of Thailand Economic Corridor development. We put a very incentive investment for the in the intermodal transport. For example, to railway to connect with the port, to connect with the airport. We spend a lot of money budget on the to rail to track railways development in the region into the border area gateway, and also that. I think we see I think that the mobilize resources budget into the infrastructure development is key of development. Thank you.
Okay, that's not an easy thing. We'll like to hear how much money you were able to mobilize in the future. You know, with that but I think without money, it's difficult. It's difficult to really move it. So you have to think from the beginning, actually, on how you will mobilize really the money to make it happen. And of course, a good plan will help. A good advertisement of that plan will help. A good communication of that plan will help. But it's not all. You really need to mobilize, and you need to ensure that the public sector is the first one to maybe put a little bit of money. Without some money from public sector, it will be difficult. Let me ask one last question. We have to wrap up. But another issue, of course, we have talked about, and I think Antonio presented about the need of hardware and the hard infrastructure and the software of the infrastructure. So in an economic corridor, the two things are important. You need to have good infrastructure to develop the corridor, to community, to connect the countries. That's very important. But I think we have learned that that's not enough. You need also to look into the soft infrastructure. You need to look into the regulations, into that complement and bring all together. We learn a lot and in a hard way on some mistakes that we have been doing along the way by just focusing on the hard infrastructure. The software is harder than the hardware, you know, actually. So let me ask maybe, I don't know, Mr. Raghu or Mr. Bin, I think if one of you two would like to briefly comment, this is the last question, how to bring all this together, the hardware and the software, and what to do there. Any of you two that would like to intervene?
Mr. Ben, you want to do it or you want me to do it?
You're mute, Mr.
Your
Ben.
mic is off. You're mute, Mr. Ben.
I think I'll let Datuk, maybe I can add on later on.
Okay. I think when we did, like what was discussed earlier in the thing, you need a proper master plan. And the master plan needs to look into the spatial requirements of regional development or even a sub-regional development. That is where you look at the hardscape requirements. But if the people of the region are not going to be enjoying the benefits and the outcome of the development, then it would be a waste. So in our projects and how we looked into the regional development, we looked at the manpower, demography, and where the populations are, where there's rural, we looked at rural-urban integration kind of projects and programs so that the soft elements can be participative in the regional development. And to prepare the soft element, I think like what I presented in my last deck, we had several human capital programs that we implemented from day one to help entrepreneurs group, that means the small and medium enterprises, to be mobilized, to be participative in the development. Even school students, as they are leaving universities or at the university level itself, to look into what would be the needs of the manpower requirements of the new developments that are coming into place. So we had programs to support that. And generally, we also looked at all those housewives or even the unemployed, or to see how we can reskill them and make them participative in the whole economic activity. So when you look at a regional development, you've also got to look at the demography of the local area and see what are the needs of the people in order for them to participate with them. And of course, the hard infrastructure is like, you know, the roads, the rail, the industrial parks with the proper amenities or utilities in order to attract the private sector to come in. And that's where there's this private-public partnership in order to develop the regional aspect. But I think that's how we looked at it, and we are doing it.
Maybe I
Thank
can,
you very much.
maybe I can add a little bit, Mr. Alfredo. Maybe as the software side, maybe we must attach together with Act and regulations. I think as far as what Dato is indicated previously, under ECR we have our own Act. So all we have we got Act to develop, and then we also merge together with all the necessary initiative for human capital development, tax incentives and other incentives that can pull the investment at particular area. So this is something which come together, hardware and software. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Raghu. Thank you, Mr. Alfredo.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dr. Raghu, Mr. Bin. Ben, it's a very, very important. I think, again, if you are going to develop an economic corridor, do not only focus on the hardware. The hardware is a necessary but not sufficient condition, clearly, for developing a successful economic corridor. You need to think on the software. You need to think on the human resources. You need to think on maybe the incentives to attract investment. You need to think, when you do a sub-regional corridor, think about trade and transport facilitation, that you allow really the trucks to move across from one place to the other. Not only having a road is sufficient. So with this, I think I would like to thank all the speakers. I think today we have presented to you, I hope colleagues from South Asia, Central Asia, you also learn about what is our experience. It's not a perfect experience yet, but as you can see, a lot of thinking, a lot of working in GMS, in BIMP EAGA, in IMT, in each of the countries at the national level, in trying to develop this economic corridor. There's a lot that we are learning from each other. I hope that you also learn from what Southeast Asia is doing. And of course, just talk to the participants and ask them if you found something interesting that you could think that you could use in your region. From here, just a few things to summarize. One is, of course, prepare a good plan. And a strategic plan is fundamental, based on good analytical work and based on an analysis of what is possible to actually do. The second is to really come up with good institutional arrangements, not forget about the local governments, and bring together national and local governments and even other stakeholders. And a very important stakeholder is the private sector. You need to engage them from the beginning to actually get their ideas, to see how they can contribute, and to get their money. Talking about money, think from the very beginning, how are you going to mobilize the financial resources needed to implement your plan? Without that, nothing will happen. From a combination of private sector, development partners, and maybe the national and local governments all together. And the last is don't forget about the software. Build your infrastructure, which is vital for the corridor, but also build and come up with, think about the software aspect, the human resources, the trade and transport facilitation, the incentives, tax incentives to attract investment. They are all very important to have a good economic corridor. So with this, thank you very much, and please let's clap down hands for all the participants. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alfredo. And with that, we close the session for the GMS, IMT, GT, and BIMP EAGA. We are still a few hours, I think half hour behind schedule, but we have enough time for a quick coffee break. So we'll give you 10 minutes to grab your coffee, and then please be